Hello and welcome back to El Pozo, the Primera RFEF show. I'm Nick Bell, your host for this evening. I'm delighted to say I'm joined once again by my co-host Liam Bambridge as we look back and look ahead to some fantastic third-tier football from Spain over the last few days. Liam, how are you doing? Wonderful to see you again.
To be here as always, Nick. Disappointed that it's a whole weekend now without being in Spain, which just feels bad, especially when it was an Easter weekend. But I watched the local non-league football instead. So and I've got a couple of trips coming up next month, so mustn't grumble. But yeah, it does make you itch to be there every weekend sometimes, doesn't it? Which is wholly unreasonable on our other halves, but still entirely understandable.
Well, I think I found the remedy now, and it's that I get to go to Spain, but then I have to say yes to everything when I come back. And one of my wife's requests this weekend was that she would like to get some ducks. So I spent my weekend clearing the garden. Next weekend, I'll be assembling said coop, and she will have ducks, and that hopefully means that I can go to Spain. So I think that's healthy, if anything, Liam.
Yeah, that's a pretty good deal. Ducks for Spain. That seems reasonable enough to me. I haven't had any requests like that, so I'm obviously getting off lightly at the moment. Don't tell my wife.
Yeah, don't tell your wife. Don't tell your wife what's happening at my end because yeah, you might end up up to your neck in all sorts of poultry. But we've obviously had a brilliant weekend of football, as you said, Liam. It's been some great battles at the top, some great battles at the bottom. I'm just going to quickly maybe divert us just stage left of Primera RFEF at the moment, just to look at some teams that might be joining us next season because we're at that phase now. We've got teams that are getting promoted, teams that get relegated. So I just thought if you could let me know about one of the teams that are coming down because I believe you're an expert in the Spanish Segunda and someone is joining us from there already.
Yeah, I like the way you say they might be joining us. I mean, one has to hope that they are joining because if they aren't, it means they've gone bust. And that's not entirely irrelevant with this particular story, Cartagena, because they have seemingly been in quite serious financial trouble over the last few seasons. And that may be at the root of why they're finally coming down to us. They haven't really invested in the squad properly over the last couple of summers. I think they are, in truth, a Primera RF team waiting to happen in not just in the last couple of weeks when they've actually officially been relegated, but certainly before that. Even last season, they had an amazing job done by Julian Calero, who's now the Levante coach, who kept them in Segunda against all the odds. But this felt like it was coming this season, and the writing's been on the wall for a number of weeks. And they have been in Segunda actually for 5 seasons, so they've not actually competed in Primera RF. It was Segunda B when they last got promoted, but the club is in turmoil, and very, very few fans turned up last weekend for what's essentially almost a derby against Granada. I think around about 500, and this is a stadium that holds over 10,000, so it was pretty grim. They're very unhappy with the way the club's being run. There's a lot of conflict between the fans and the board. And somebody needs to go in there and make the place a bit happier again. There's a lot of talk of the club being sold, and that's gone on for several seasons now, to be honest. So yeah, they'll hopefully still be with us in Primera RFEF in August, but it's not a good time to be a Cartagena fan. Let's hope they pull through this. A team in a better place, although they have had problems in the past, haven't they, Nick, is Guadalajara, who are joining us from below, so to speak, rather than above.
Yeah, I've been taking particular interest in the Segunda Federación in the last few days and sort of like seeing where the movers and shakers are going to be. And the first team that came through the trap was Guadalajara, Club Deportivo Guadalajara. They've spent a few seasons in Segunda not too long ago, if I believe, but because of the usual story, financial irregularities, and the none of the successes on there, they did drop as low as the Tercera. But they're a club that are fighting on their way back after their restructure a few years ago. They play in some brilliant. You've already said that you're a fan of purple kits, Liam. Is this tickling that itch for you? Is this the purple kit that you've been waiting for in Primera?
I think they're going to, aren't they? It's their home kit. They always play in purple. It's a deep purple as well. They come very excited about it. Can't wait to see what the 25-26 kit looks like. And you're right. Yeah, they have had some hard times. I think, again, they haven't been with us since 2016, actually. And again, that was in the Bay days, of course. So we'll see what happens with them. But yeah, it is exciting. And another thing's exciting about it in terms of us ground hopping types is it's really near Madrid, isn't it? I think it's only about 35 minutes from Barajas. the main airport. So I think that's somewhere we may have to go in 25-26, Nick. And delighted for them. Obviously, teams always seem a bit more buoyant, don't they, when they're doing well? But at the moment, there does seem to be a real, air of excitement around that club. And let's hope they can carry on into Segunda B. Likewise, quite a long way west, Nick, of Guadalajara. There's another team where everything seems to be going very, very well right now in terms of obviously being promoted is always going to be good, but there just seems to be a real good feel about this club, doesn't there, at the moment?
It is, and that club is Pontevedra. That is the team that is based over in Galicia. And if you've been following their story this weekend, they kind of knew the script already, didn't they? They were 8 points clear with 3 games to go. They knew basically avoid losing, and they were up as champions. And boy, did they celebrate this weekend, Liam, with a fantastic result as well at home in front of their own fans.
Yeah, brilliant stuff, wasn't it? I think they have only been out of Primera for 2 years, actually. It is a big club. It's a club that should be at that level at the third tier at the very least. The Spanish football. They made the finals last year, if I remember rightly, Deportivo Aragon in the Real Zaragoza filial in the semis, and then lost to another filial, Betis Deportivo, in the final. Again, pass that on. Their stadium looks great. It is quite a lot further from Madrid, but there is a high-speed train. The AVE goes to Pontevedra, so not impossible to achieve. It's much harder, isn't it, Nick, for us, Nick, to get to these grounds in the far northwest of Spain from the northwest of England. But that high-speed train may help us out if we're trying to make a trip there in 25-26.
Yeah, and is it a purple kit or is it maroon kit? What are we saying here? Or burgundy?
Yeah,
it's a really nice kit.
Nice kit, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I do like it. It's not Guadalajara's deep purple, but it is a nice maroon kit, and I do like a nice burgundy maroon kit as well. So yeah, any thoughts on who else might come up with them in terms of other? You said you keep a close eye on it all. Any of the champions in the making? There's only 2 weeks to go, isn't there? So there's not a lot of time to go, and we think perhaps 1 or 2 of them might have clinched it with a week to spare. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely, and like you say, the Segunda Federación season does finish a lot earlier than most of the other ones in Spain. I imagine to facilitate the madness that will be the playoff system that they have to negotiate with the amount of groups that they've got. But the ones that do look like they could get promoted next weekend, or certainly all but mathematically, are the likes of La Unión down in Grupo 5, I think it is, down in Andalusia. Club Europa as well over in Barcelona. They've got a slender lead over Sant Andreu. And then also Arenas de Guezo in Bilbao area. They're quite close. I think they're 3 points clear of SD Logroñés at the moment. A really fierce battle. At the weekend, Logroñés did go top temporarily, and their fans were very, very happy about that. But Arenas just came back with a very impressive win on Sunday and reclaimed their top spot as well. So almost there for their 3 sides.
We should mention that although we hold nothing against Arenas de Guezo, nice Basque side, we would quite like Este Logroñés to win that league, I think, because they are, of course, one of the fan-owned clubs, one of the clubs that's mentioned in Miguel Pereira's excellent book that, you spoke to Miguel last week, didn't you, in the book called Pasión, A Journey to the Soul of Spanish Football. And yeah, he mentions he has a big chunk of the chapter on fan-owned teams on Este Logroñés, so that would be great. But obviously, if they don't make it, they've got a chance in the playoffs, and we may yet see them in Primera RFEF next year. One team we might well not see in Primera RFEF next year, the way things are going, is Alcoyano. And I have to say, Nick, this is a bit of a shambles at the moment, isn't it? What happened last weekend that made us think, well, just hold our heads really in disbelief?
Yeah, well, obviously we saw the resignation of Vicente Mia the weekend before. He basically just had enough of the criticism and obviously the restraints he's possibly got at the club. But Luis Miguel Garrido, he was interviewed and basically told the job was his. You take it as a formality. Then Saturday comes around, and on the official team sheet or the match report, whichever one it be, the manager spot is just blank. There's just no manager name whatsoever. However, there is a club delegate that's been put in there as for Alcoyano, and that was Luis Miguel Garrido. And you've got to think that, if you've interviewed for the job, you're there, you're basically running the side. Why haven't they announced him as manager yet? It's a real mess, isn't it, Liam?
Totally. So, I mean, I just can't understand at all. I just feel very sorry for Luis Miguel Garrido. His first job as a number one. I think he was interviewed by a local journalist, wasn't it? And in Alcoy, and I thought that was it. I was just waiting for the club to announce, yes, this is it, to do it formally. Doesn't seem to have happened. This is a club that's in a real mess, isn't it? I mean, it started last summer. There's a lot of talk that the owner wants to move the team to La Nucía, where there was a club already. I don't quite know what that was all about, whether he was going to ground share, whether he was actually just going to take over La Nucía, make La Nucía sort of, the new Alcoyana, so to speak. It didn't work. There's a lot of opposition to that. The local council owns the ground, Collao, I think it's called, in Alcoy. Doesn't seem particularly bothered in upgrading facilities there. It is pretty basic. I have been there. It's a great place to watch football, but it does need a little bit of TLC. I went there actually with a friend of mine, and the shirt last year was really distinctive. It was this Moros y Cristianos, and a shout out to their heritage. Really quite, you'd like to think, Nick. I'm not sure if you remember what it was like, but half and half basically, and it was really quite unique, even if perhaps not everyone's cup of tea. We wanted to buy one after the game, and the office was closed. So, not exactly great business sense there going on. And I did speak to a few fans about this, and they said, we can't buy merchandise from them either. It's not even available to us, and we go every other week. So, it's really, really sad situation. And what really makes me most sad of all, Nick, is the fact that, out on social media, you see a real, hardcore of passionate fans who love this club, and quite a few of them went up to Atletico de Madrid Bay last weekend, even though their team's in a mess, and cheered on their team there. And they just deserve better, don't they? It's just really shabby way to treat a fan base.
They really do. And, it's Alcoy is a very traditional town that's very proud of its heritage and very proud of its roots. And, it's in towns like that where you do get the local support to back your local football team. There are plenty of other teams in the area, some stretching from La Liga down to the very league that we're in, and potentially even below, that they could go and support if they wanted to. But, the fact that they want to back their own side is extremely brilliant. And it's sad to see them getting treated this way. But, I think we'd be remiss to say that this isn't the first time this has happened to fans of clubs like this. Not to throw rumor and conjecture into this podcast, but, we were speaking about, La Union getting promoted out of Segunda Federación. There are heavy rumors about those guys potentially being relocated to Malaga in the near future as well. So it's a dark side of Spanish football that I don't really enjoy, because the last people that do get thought of in Spanish football in general, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, are the fans, and it's a sorry state of affairs, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Totally agree with you, Nick. It's really poor, and it happens too often, and needs to be something done about it, really, because these kind of stories do not do the game, do not give the game a good name in Spain, and really, as you say, show scant regard for supporters. On a brighter note, talking of supporter, did you see a music video that has been released on YouTube this week with a very strong connection indeed to a Primera RFEF football team?
I haven't seen this yet. You've brought this to my attention, but I believe if you're a supporter of, I assume, very joyous Spanish music and Primera RFEF, then this might be the choice for you, Liam. I believe you know a bit more about this than I do, but it's a fun story, isn't it?
It's brilliant, isn't it? I love this. I mean, Gimnástica Segoviana, one of the smaller teams in the league, just been promoted from Segunda RFEF last summer, might unfortunately go back down again. They're struggling in the relegation places. But Sara Martin, a local singer, has put out a video, basically, has written a song about her love for her local team, has put out a music video which includes footage of the team, the supporters. Segovia, of course, a beautiful town, so it's got some of the some of the backdrop is actually some of the sites of Segovia as well. Absolutely brilliant. I did just tweet it earlier on this evening on our social media on El Pozo. Please go and have a look at it, because it's a really well done job, and it's just called Sego. It uses Sego as the kind of shortening of the team's name, Sego till I die, basically, which I think is great. And so, brilliant. Well done, Sarah. I'd love to see that. And please do go and watch the video, because it's a really good watch. It's really slick and well put together, and she's got a great voice.
Yes, that'll be the first thing I do after this podcast ends its recording tonight, and I'll probably end up listening to it over and over again on your recommendation, Liam. But yeah, that's a sort of a roundup of the news, good and bad. Let's start to look at some of the results from this weekend. And first of all, I'll take us to Grupo Uno. It is the same top five that we started with. Cultural Leonesa, Ponferradina, Gimnàstica de Tarragona, Real Sociedad B, and Andorra. At one point, Ponfe did have Cultural down to 2 points. We spoke about this last week, Liam, and said that, could there be a chance here with Nastic and Cultural playing each other that Ponfe could be the real winners of this weekend? But that was put to bed with the fact that, Cultural did get a result, so restored their lead. The nearest challenges to the playoffs at the moment are, unfortunately, some of those filiales that we don't like to talk about too much, but it is Bilbao Athletic who are in the driving seat at the moment, followed by Baracaldo and Salta Fortuna and Ourense, as they all lost this weekend as well, more importantly. And then just the one change down in the bottom five as well, Lugo with a 1-0 win against Real Sociedad B, basically takes them out of the relegation zone at the expense of Real Union and pushes them back into it as well. So this could be quite a little fun top and tail for the rest of the season, being perfectly honest. Bottom four stay the same: Sestao River Club, Gimnàstica, Barça Athletic and Amorebieta. But Sestao and Barça Athletic maybe with a little bit of hope of surviving, as they are both in pretty good form at the minute, Liam.
They absolutely are, yeah. 3 wins out of 4, aren't they? And listeners will leave you to work out which one of those we would be really happy about surviving if they did. I think actually Celta Fortuna drew. I would have liked them to lose because they were playing Tarazona, who are one of my favourite sides in Grupo Uno, but I think it was a draw. But yeah, Ourense and Baracaldo both lost. And yeah, as you say, Bilbao Athletic are the closest challengers. They could knock out Real Sociedad B, but as long as both of them don't get in it, then we'll be okay. We don't want 2 filiales in the top 5, do we?
No, we would certainly like to avoid that. But what about the rest of the group there, Liam, in terms of like what are your thoughts and how things unfolded for those top 3 teams?
Yeah, you mentioned, didn't you, about this situation where Ponfe had cut the lead. It looked very comfortable that the lead was going to be cut to 2 points. They were 2-0 up after half an hour. And then Osasuna Promesas came back to 2-2 by half time, and it went right to the death. And then Pau Ferrer, who I think he scored last week as well. He came off the bench last week to score against Zamora. This time he left it even late. He scored in the 90th minute. So that 3-2 victory was eventually sealed in the very last minute. And that meant, as you said, the gap was down to 2 points. And Cultu had, therefore, to play later on that day, knowing that they'd only won one of the previous 6, that they were playing Gimnàstica de Tarragona. And, if they didn't win it, then obviously Ponfe would be a maximum of 3 points away. But they did win it. And what did you make of that performance by Cultu to beat Gimnàstica?
I think it shows you the test of a good side in this league, that they could come out of this match weathering everything that Nastic chucked at them. They really threw the kitchen sink at them, so to speak, in this match. But it was Cultural who came out on top. 2 penalties. I remember texting you at the time saying I think the first one, a foul by Antonio Leal, was a bit soft for me. I've seen him give him, but he went looking for it maybe a little bit. But certainly no doubts about the second one. A hack from a former Blackpool player, no less, Joan Orial, giving Anton Escobar the chance to convert once again. And if you are a aspiring footballer, so to speak, I would definitely recommend you watch Anton Escobar's penalty technique. It is a 1-step, bang, top left-hand corner, absolutely flawless, brilliant penalties. And like you say, they came out on top despite the fact that Nastic were not overwhelmingly in charge, but they really looked like they wanted to get a result here away from home and to get themselves firmly into the title race. They did get a bit of a consolation goal with an excellent finish by Victor Naro, who I know that you're a fan of, but I think it's now a bit too much for Nastic, and a playoff campaign beckons once again.
Yeah, you know all about their playoff campaigns in recent years, don't you, Nick? Yeah, I agree. I think that they just haven't been good enough away from home, have they, Gimnàstica de Tarragona? They're formidable at home. And they didn't play bad in this game. And as you say, they just gave away 2 silly goals. I think the first one, you've seen him given, you've seen him not given, but as soon as Antonio Leal puts his hands on the culture forward, he's taking that chance, isn't he? And Joan Oriol, he kind of holds his hands up after, doesn't he? He knows as soon as he's done it, it's a ridiculous challenge. And yeah, they gave themselves too much to do in this game. And as you say, I think they've given themselves too much to do in terms of becoming champions and avoiding the playoffs. Andorra had a good win, and I think they're still very much in the picture, but not going to reach Culto either. They've got two good strikers there. Manu Nieto and Arturo de Leon scored all 5 goals between them. They are definitely, was 2 of the better strikers in Primera RFEF. So if they are to be in the playoffs, I think those 2 will represent a real threat to whoever they play. I want to shout out before we move on to the game that I think we most want to talk about in this particular grupo, Nick, to the groundsman at Lugo, because I don't know if you saw this game. It was absolutely bucketing it down. I've never seen anything like it. It was for 90 minutes, and I know Galicia is quite good at doing rain, and obviously coming from Manchester as I do right now, I know what rain's all about. But the pitch held up unbelievably. There were no puddles or anything, and it was quite astonishing. So yeah, chapeau to whoever the groundsman is at Lugo, because he made sure the game happened, which it might well not have done. And Lugo duly won the game 1-0 against Real Sociedad B. And as you said, swap places with Real Union down the bottom. Talking at the bottom, tell us a bit more, Nick, about that game we've been dying to talk about since we started this roundup, which is Sestao River Club's amazing win in the Derby del Hierro.
Yes, which is a name I only found out about on Saturday, to be fair, because I was like going, the Bilbao Derby, it's going to be great and things like that. And then it had its actual name, and I was like, this is brilliant. But it was a game between those, 2 neighbouring barrios. We've been excited about it all week. And I'll be honest with you, the first half that I tuned in for, especially, didn't have too much going for it. It was a bit, end to end, knock and knock. That there was a goal in the first half, a brilliant solo effort from Unai Buhan. He basically just dribbled through the middle and then stuck it in the top left-hand corner. And you start to think, well, maybe this is just what's going to happen. Baracaldo are going to take charge here. But it was your man, Diego Aznar, that basically equalised for Sestao River Club. Again, another excellent finish at the near post. And do not sleep on him. Like you say, Huesca, who are bereft of goals at the moment, could do with a striker of his nature. And then you just think, right, well, the fight back's on. That'll do. Last 10 minutes, it all goes bloody mental, doesn't it, Liam? 2 powerful headers from each side. The first one coming from Ayam Helbat, who basically latches on the end of a corner and gives Baracaldo the lead. You think, job done, no chance. In a similar fashion, Ray Lu pops up at the other end. He scores a bullet header at the back post from a corner. And you think, right, we're done now. I've had enough. It's too much for me. It's too much. And then a looping cross, an advantageous cross at best, just finds its way into the box. Unfortunately, it is Borja Garcia who just puts his toe on it and scores the most unbelievable own goal. It sends Sestao into hysterics. The players are on the pitch. They've gone absolutely mental, and with good reason too. Their first win at Lezayre ever, I believe, Liam. You might be able to correct me on that one, but what a result for Sestao River Club, and the bragging rights firmly are theirs.
Incredible. And that, I think, was actually the goal was in the 97th minute. It was actually in the first, it was an extra minutes. They were going to play 6 minutes. There was some to do on the touchline, and then the referee indicated he was going to add an extra minute on, and that happened. I mean, talk about last kick of the game. There was not even time to kick off again. Quite remarkable game. I felt terrible because I didn't see the first half. I think I came in just as Wuhan scored just before the interval, and I think that's when your duck escapade started, your
yes.
duck preparation escapade started, didn't it, or something? And I was like texting you frantically in the second half, not realizing you were watching it, and obviously making it even worse for me because I sent you about 8 or 10 texts. I said, "My goodness me, this is happened. I can't believe this," and incredibly irritating. So I apologise now on air for that, but I wasn't aware that you weren't actually viewing it. And I think you went back, didn't you, then, and watched the second half the next morning, which tremendous stuff. Yeah, I'm delighted for them. Obviously, I think Real Sestao River Club, overall, I thought they deserved it. And as you say, Aznar, brilliant finish. What a player he looks like he is. We were obviously disappointed later on in the weekend when Real Union got beaten by Barça Athletic. But ultimately, they have been playing well recently. Barça Athletic. So if you're a fan of Filiales or you particularly like Barcelona and you want their B team to do well as well, they're only 4 points from safety now. And they're on a high, aren't they? They're on the roll. Two teams that are not on the roll met in one of your partidos de la jornada last Friday night. All I can say, Nick, is I do really hope you didn't make your wife watch even the highlights of this one on her birthday.
Yes, this was definitely one for the purists. Playing out a pretty dull 0-0 draw. I watched this one back, admittedly on like, when you can do like 0.15 speed, so you can get through it a little bit quicker, when I got home from a lovely day in Haworth. And I think the only thing that happened was Unionistas slapped it against the bar in like the 92nd minute. There really wasn't anything going for them here, and the result does no favours for either of them as well in terms of keeping the chasing pack at bay. And to be honest, they are really in danger of, as you've just said, Sestao River Club, Barça Athletic, Lugo, those teams that are beneath them, chipping away at their slender lead at the moment in terms of coming to the final few games of the season. So the ones to watch for me.
Yeah, it's all about momentum, isn't it? As you say, Unionistas playing Alan Taylor, and this one, both sides bang out of form, and that's how it looked, wasn't it? It looked like a really, really poor game between two sides who were struggling for confidence, and there are other sides around them who are winning games. And as we know, 5 go down out of 20 teams. So, and this is a league that has got, a lot of people quite close to that relegation zone. So there's definitely potential for both of those two to get sucked into the bottom 5. So let's really hope that does not happen for those two sets of supporters. Grupo dos. Also, same 5 as before in the playoff places. That's Ceuta, Real Murcia, Antequera, Ibiza, and Merida. But who were the big winners this weekend, Nick?
Oh, well, you've got to say it's a great weekend for Ceuta, because not only did they become a record-breaking side, but they also saw their rivals drop points, which gives them a nice cushion at the top, so to speak, don't they, Liam?
Yeah, very much so. I think it's 4 points now, isn't it? Murcia lost, Antequera lost, and 4 points clear at the top, with just 5 games to go. We'll talk perhaps a little bit more about those games and the defeats for the automatic promotion chase in a bit. Let's just round off that top 5, say a bit more about the teams I'm not going to mention so much, and also the teams down the bottom. Ibiza being another team that we wanted to mention because they won at last, and Merida because they still can't win away from home. They're still 5th, but just 3 wins and 17 away games. And we have, as we mentioned in Grupo Uno, also Grupo Dos, a series of filiales chasing down both Merida and also Ibiza for those final 4th and 5th places in the table. Both Real Madrid Castilla and Atletico Madrid B won this weekend. Sevilla Atletico lost, but they're still very much in it. They lost to Ibiza, of course. So, interesting times. At the bottom, one piece of tremendous news is that Yaclán are out of the drop zone, and Marbella have taken their place. The other 4 are the same. So the 4 teams that were in the bottom 4 going into the Jornada Recreativa de Huelva, Atlético Sanluqueño, Alcoyano, and Intercity are the bottom 4 because none of those won. Tell us a bit more about that record-breaking victory for Ceuta against Marbella.
Yes, obviously there would have been some celebrating on the North African coast on Saturday. Not only did they end up with a fantastic 3-1 win against Marbella, the team from the other side of the Mediterranean, which is always a bit weird to say, but 20 games unbeaten now for them, secures them as the premier side of this division, the longest unbeaten run, and now the record holders. And in terms of the match, it was a great game for Ceuta as well. I actually don't think Marbella played too badly in this game either, but in the same way we speak about Cultural in Grupo Uno, what Ceuta are doing in Grupo Dos, they look like champions elect, and certainly in this game, they came out on top on doing that. That first goal from Ruben Diaz, really shows a lesson in perseverance if you're a Ceuta fan. Also shows you a lesson in how to clear your lines if you're a Marbella boy, because it was not that great to do. But the one we do have to pick out is this goal from Andy Escudero, an absolute peach going into the top left-hand corner. Funnily enough, Dione scored a very similar goal for Malaga last season. It's kind of mirrored either which way. So it must be a good chosen end, hallowed turf maybe, but a brilliant goal for him. And then a penalty to round it off and make it 3-1. Again, we'll talk about soft penalties for Liam. I wouldn't have given this to the letter of the law, maybe, yes, but is he really going to, chuck in a bicycle kick from, 18 yards out? I don't think so. But, at a great, victory for Ceuta, it gives them that cushion at the top, as we said, and 24 hours later, they were probably thinking, this is the best weekend ever.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. I don't think he was going to score from there. I have seen some stills of it, though, that suggest that somebody's got a big handful of his shirt. So maybe it is. But yeah, for me, it definitely falls in the category of soft penalties, I would agree. But you're right. Yeah, 24 hours later, all of a sudden, great for Ceuta, looking like they really, really might make it up into Segundo, although there is some work to do yet, of course. Because essentially both of the teams, I think we always knew that Real Murcia had a tough task. We picked out their trip to Alcorcón as one of the partidos de la jornada, didn't we? And they struggled in this game. I know they were very unhappy with the refereeing. Fran Fernandez afterwards said that the referee had insulted some of his players and they felt all the decisions went against them. I'm not sure. I mean, for me, I thought both sendings off were correct. But they still only hung on for a point, and Alcorcón won it in injury time, which was tremendous for them. Obviously, they're still in with a very outside chance of making that top 5 Alcorcón. I think they've won 3 times in injury time now in the last 3 weeks. So they really play to the very end. They do. The biggest surprise of all, of course, I suppose, was Antequera getting beaten at home by our friends from Yacana Deportivo, wasn't it?
Yeah, and those fans who did make the trip across to Andalusia were rewarded for their loyalty, because they did really, really well to restrict Antequera, who I believe are the highest goal scorers in Primera at the moment, but basically weathered whatever came their way and took their chance, more importantly. And I literally mean their chance, because I think they came away from this game with 1 shot, 1 goal, but all 3 points. And I think when you're a team that's down there at the bottom, that's all that matters, isn't it? So, a very impressive win for them. Dressed splendidly as well, Liam. We've been sleeping on this. We weren't aware of their game with their away kit, were we, for Yeclano Deportivo?
I think it's the third kit that particularly impresses us, isn't it? The delightful blue number, which I'm very, very keen to get my hands on. But yeah, they were tremendous in this game, as you say. They were. I mean, they were very resilient. I think you're right. I'm not sure if Antequera scored the most goals of anybody in Primera RFEF, but I'm sure they have scored the most goals at home. So of any of the 40 sides, and they didn't have a single shot on target. Now, they were really bereft of ideas and really, really poor on the day, and just looked a bit listless for a team that is right in it. It was really strange performance. But you have to give some credit to Claro Deportivo, who are extremely good defensively, one of the best sides. Their problem is not keeping out goals, it's scoring goals. So yeah, you're right. They took their 1 chance at the penalty spot and hung on fairly comfortably for the remainder of the second half, which was over 40 minutes. We probably should mention, shouldn't we, actually, although I wasn't going to dwell on Ibiza, it was one of the other partidos de la jornada that I picked out, and a welcome return to form for Paco Gémez's side. But I kind of like most of all what he said about the players' families. He essentially said, I'm really pleased they won, because the players just, what players are like. They're going to get home and they're going to be an absolute fucking nightmare, basically, if they don't win. It's like, Paco, it's all right. You can have a press conference without swearing, basically. But he's like, yeah, they're going to get home. They're going to be happy. They're not going to be like, treat their families like shit. They're going to have a good time and go out and celebrate. I'm like, yeah, Paco, you're right. They are. And Una Medina, I suppose you should pick out as well. Goal and assist. I mean, that's the profile of the Ibiza squad, isn't it? I mean, he's been in Segundo in Numancia. He's been the winner, I think, in Santander. And they really ought to make the playoffs. At the very least, that's the profile of those kind of, the standard, isn't it? The few ex-Malaga players in there. They are built to cope at least with this division on, in a playoff capacity. And let's see what happens. The third partido de la jornada was the Andalusian derby between Algeciras and Atlético Sanluqueño. What did you make of that?
Oh, well, I think the home side will definitely rue their missed chances, because they had plenty of them. It really looked like one-way traffic, and they, did, score a brilliant opening goal. But they also conceded a very poor goal, which kind of like just trickled its way through to an Atlético Sanluqueño player. and he's just buried it across at the far post. And you could see the confusion on the Algeciras players' faces because they were in control. They were looking at another victory, and it was unusual that this happened. But you've got to give it to a fair play to San Eugenio here, because again, similar to Yaclano, they just saw out the game and were happy to come away with a point and took their chance. More importantly, and these are the kind of results that will either save their season or prevent the home side from maybe being in the playoffs. We don't know yet, but it's definitely for me a 2 points dropped by Algeciras.
Yeah, very much so. One of the things that amused me most of all about this was the two commentators trying to have a little bet with each other as to whether they could pronounce Jude's surname. We're talking, of course, about Jude Soonsup-Bell, who came off the bench late on in the second half, and the two of them were going, "So should we call him Jude? Should we call him Jude? No, I'm going to have a go. It's Soonsup-Bell. Yeah, it's Soonsup-Bell." It's like, brilliant. It's not the most straightforward surname, is it, for two native Spanish speakers to deal with? But they did a great job, both of them. So fair play to them. The team that did not do a very good job, unfortunately, from a defensive point of view, was, of course, Recreativo de Huelva. It all started so well, didn't it? I mean, they had a lucky penalty to go one up, and then it all went wrong.
Yeah, it kind of felt like one of those. If you've ever seen the Simpsons meme where Homer Simpson's beating up the Hamburglar or whatever he's called, it's just like, stop, he's already dead. And that's how I felt watching Rekia here, because it was an onslaught from Real Madrid Castilla, who have been draw specialists this time out, and in this game they just seemed to pull the ripcord and ran away with it, literally ran away with it. And obviously 2 goals from Gonzalo Garcia. He's the the league's top goal scorer, I believe, still. But if he's now going to start picking up form, and you've already warned that these filiales are queuing up to crash the playoffs, well, Castilla could do with a lot worse than him hitting his stride once again for the Madrid-based side.
Yeah, very much so. He's got 24 now, hasn't he? And Victor Munoz got a couple of goals in this game, and I agree, it really was one of those, one of those ones. If there'd been a boxing match, the referee would have kind of stopped the contest, wouldn't it? It was painful to watch after that initial moment of hope for the Recre fans. Did you pick out anything particularly awful, particularly stunning this week? We've already mentioned Diego Aznar's Sestao River Club top bins, loved it. Don't like to mention Filiales, but Oscar Marcos' goal for Celta Fortuna against Tarazona was decent. And what about John Garcia's Osasuna Promesas against Ponferradina? Have you seen that one? I'm like, is it a great goal, or should the keeper do better?
I'm of the impression that the keeper should do better, in that opinion, for me. But I take nothing away from Osasuna Promesas. Like you say, they're down there, potentially looking at being dragged into that relegation fight. So they'll take anything they could get, and getting anything against Ponferradina is a result. If it's just a goal, that's a good. Maybe you needed to put his swimming cap on once again for this one, because I thought he could have definitely done better with this one.
He's a great keeper player, isn't he? He's one of the best keepers in either division. And I was disappointed with him on this one. He did it well, Garcia, but I felt like he should have done better. I think comedy defensive moment, I'm afraid, is all about Sevilla Atletico, second Ibiza goal. Talk us through what happened there, Nick.
Yes, well, basically, it just sort of like comes through to the goalkeeper, if I remember rightly, and they just caught out possession. Keeper saves the goal, but then he decides to try and clear it and just belts it into his own defender. I think it was Iker Munoz. And then the ball just, again, comically trickles over the line, slow as you like. And it's one of those moments where the Sevilla Atletico players must have been thinking, what have we got to do? What have we got to do to get a result here and not concede goals? Because it was a bit daft. It was a bit, to say the least, wasn't it?
Unnecessary. I mean, I'm always a little bit skeptical about playing out for the back. I know so many teams do it, but having played out from the back and got caught in possession, what you definitely don't need to do is then have a keeper who just punches it straight into the shins of a defender. So yeah, comedy, and eventually it didn't really matter because Ibiza ran out fairly comfortable winners. Same problem, I suppose, with Prieto. He didn't really get punished for that mistake against John Garcia from the long range shot, did he? Because of the last minute winner from Pau Ferrer. So his blushes were spared, but the Sevilla Atletico keeper will not have a particularly happy memory of this weekend. Talking about that last weekend, well, I think that's where we finished last weekend. Let's move on to this weekend. Let's talk about Grupo 1. I believe it's my turn to choose Grupo 1. I think you're a bit gutted because you think most of the good games are in Grupo 1 this weekend. But you will, Nick, find 3 games in Grupo 2 to be your partidos de la jornada. And you can share this group with me if you like. I'm going to start with Bilbao Athletic against Cultural Leonesa. So big games at the top of the table. There are 2 of them for me. This is the first one. Bilbao Athletic very quietly have only lost 1 in 14. They're very, very good away from home, not so good at home. 2 points off 5th place. We mentioned they're the closest challengers to the top 5. But Cultural Leonesa will go there in really, really good shape, won't they? They've been in a bad run, and then they won this big game, as we said, against Gimnástica last week. The trouble for them is they haven't won on the road in over 3 months. So that, for me, if they can get a draw in this one, I think they'll take that. But of course, there is the issue of Ponferradina then having the chance to close the gap again to 3 points. What's the issue, though, for Ponferradina this weekend, do you think?
Well, it's the fact that they've got a game against Tarazona is what I'm going to say there from it. Adrian Fuentes and co rocking up in that game, which I believe is your second choice for this week, isn't it?
Absolutely is, yeah. I think this could be not necessarily a great game, but I think it's a big game, isn't it? As I say, the 2 games featuring the top 2 have to be mentioned. And yeah, Tarazona, Adrian Fuentes, you mentioned him. He scored again last weekend. Just one of the best signings of this last summer, isn't he? He's done brilliantly for Tarazona. And, ultimately, Ponfe will go there knowing this is one of the toughest sides to beat at home. They concede very few goals. If I remember rightly, they've only conceded 10 all season and 3 in the last 8 home games. So they are really, really good. But of course, they have got this advantage, Nick. If they go there and they beat Tarazona and Cultural Leonesa, slip up against Bilbao Athletic, if they could get to within 3 points of Cultural Leonesa, as we mentioned before, they play them in the penultimate jornada. The 2 sides have exactly the same goal difference right now. But the issue for Ponferradina is that they lost the first game against Cultural Leonesa 2-0. So they have to win at least 2-0 in that second game, because in Spain, in Segunda, in Primera RFEF, and I think in La Liga as well, isn't that right? It's all about goal average. It's all about how you get on against the other team. So even if they move on and have a better goal difference by the end of the season, but finish level with Cultural Leonesa, if they don't win that second game against them 2-0, then they will lose the goal average, and therefore they will not finish above them if they finish on the same number of points. Is that confusing enough for everybody? Probably.
Yeah, I forgot about that part from last season as well, because Malaga had something very similar when they were looking like they weren't going to make the playoffs, and some of the chasing pack had got better results from them. So yeah, that does make things very interesting, because I assume it works for first and second as well, not just for playoff places. I'm going to go with there. So if they finish level on points, then yeah, there could be riots in Leon if that's the case.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately to go, I mean, let's face it, we will know a lot more, won't we, by the penultimate week where we're at. But, cool to be able to go there and be able potentially, if they're 3 points ahead, to lose the game 1-0, knowing that still won't cost them if they move level on points with, Ponferradina in for that last game of the season. The last game of the season they will play at home, and they will know that they need to win it. So they can afford to lose that game as long as they don't lose it too badly. Of course, if they lose it 2-0, it comes back to goal difference. So, there's a lot still to play for there. But first of all, Ponferradina have to go to Tarazona and win that game and hope that Cultural Leonesa slip up in the Fama, and that's a big ask for Ponferradina. So we'll see. A game that's no less crucial, but down the bottom end of the table, is another Galician derby, Arenteiro against Lugo. Arenteiro in dreadful form, as you said, were really poor last weekend in Salamanca against Unionistas. I think they haven't won for 7 now, Arenteiro. Lugo won 3 in a row, then they lost 3 in a row, and they won the last one. So their last 7 games, they've won 4. So they've done a lot better than Arenteiro. I think it's going to be a really tight, tense game, this one. I suspect by now as well, the Arenteiro pitch is not looking great. It's one of the smaller teams in the league, and it will dry it out by now, so it'll be a difficult surface. So I don't think it's going to be a classic, but it's going to be a really important game in the context of who survives to fight another day in Primera Federación next season. So slim pickings in Grupo 2. Tell us about the slim pickings you managed to dig up, Nick.
Yeah, I was going to say from the looking at the fixtures for Grupo Dos before, I was a bit like, oh, well, I don't really know if I want to watch too many of them, but I will watch some of them. As you well know, I do like to tune into what I can at the time, but I think the balance of power firmly lies with Grupo Uno this weekend. The first game I've gone to is a relegation dogfight between Alcayano and Recreativo de Huelva on Saturday evening. I'm more interested to see whether Alcayano got a manager and not a delegate at this point, because again, as we spoke before, it's a pretty dire situation that they're in, not just on the pitch but off it as well. But it's also a test for Recca as well. You know, we've spoken of our fondness of them and how we'd love to see them remain at this level. They're a club that at least deserves to be playing at this level. But if they don't get a result here against Alcayano side completely bereft of ideas and of identity, then ultimately they probably deserve to be cut away and maybe be relegated down to Segunda Federación. Alternatively, if they do get a result here, this could be the lighting the torch for them. That means they go on a bit of a run, string a few results together, and they're back in the safety. And we've got the abuelo of Spanish football back in Primera RFEF next season as well. So that's the first game for me. It's going to be interesting, isn't it, Liam? That one. I think it's not going to be a classic, though, is it?
No, I don't think so. I think, as you say, Alcoyana, we've mentioned at the top of the show, we're really disappointed to see the state that club is in. I agree with you. Let's see if he actually makes it into the manager's box on the team sheet, or whether he's still going to be a delegado. Appalling, really. And Recre, long travel across, so I doubt many fans will make that trip. And it's a really, it's from west to east, basically, isn't it? And yeah, they need to start pulling their finger out, don't they? Really, it's a club, as you say, that we'd like to see survive, that has the fan base and the infrastructure to be at least a Primera Federación side, but they've been so disappointed in recent weeks. So it's a big one for them to show that they really mean it. And a lot of talk about lack of fight recently from them, and from the supporters, quite critical of them. So here's a chance to really roll up the sleeves and grind out a narrow victory if they can. How about a game between two sides that sort of kind of might be playoff contenders, but aren't really, Nick? Because that's your second game, I think, isn't it?
It is. And I'm going for Hercules against Alcorcon. Like I say, both teams that are literally slap bang in the middle of the table, 9th and 10th respectively, both on 44 points. And I think ultimately with this one, maybe the interesting factor is that whoever comes out on top probably is that last side that could maybe hold a little flicker of hope of making the playoffs if they manage to put a bit of form together. For me, Alcorcon, as we've mentioned, are in pretty good form as well. Hercules have dropped away ever so slightly, but they're the home side. They're at the Jose Rico Perez, and it'll be interesting to see whether they can come out on top and maybe again put this string of wins together that gets them involved instead of one of these bloody filiales instead. And ultimately, the loser will be consigned to another season of Primera football, which isn't the worst thing in the world, if I'm being honest, Liam. But I'm sure they've got aspirations of playing higher.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, Hercules, as we've said before, is a club that definitely is built to at least a Segunda club. Alcorcon is a relatively minnow in Segunda, but has been up there and has enjoyed up there and would love to get back there. And yeah, I think in a way the worst result for me here would be a draw, because as you say, would play into the hands of the filiales who sit just above them and give them the chance to extend their lead and make them the only real serious contenders for top 5 place. So I do hope one of these two teams wins this game, and really, as you say, pushes on and tries to really put pressure on the top 5, as opposed to either of the Madrid sides or Atletico. Talking of Sevilla Atletico, I know we don't like to mention, but I suspect I know what your third game is going to be.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I would have got away with leaving them out, especially with there being such slim pickings, as you mentioned. But there is a Seville derby down in Andalusia this weekend. It is Betis Deportivo against Sevilla Atletico. If both sides could lose, I'd be happy, but that's not how football works, as I mentioned last week. Sevilla Atletico will be looking to get their season back on track and try and crash into those playoffs. And a win would really help them. But also, in the same breath as we said that Hercules and Alcorcon are on 44 points, they could crash the playoff race at the last minute. So could Betis Deportivo. And, a result for them against their cross-city rivals would not only be great for bragging rights, but also good for their season. So one to watch there, but probably not too closely. I won't be dialing in for that one if I'm being perfectly honest, Liam.
No, you will find me a long way from that game, no matter when it takes place. I'm a bit disappointed you missed that Merida against Antequera, man. I mean, come on, that should be a good game. Certainly worth more mention than a filial derby, but never mind. Yeah, I shall keep an eye on that one as well. But yeah, there are some decent games. When you look a bit harder, there are some decent games in there. You know, it's just that I agree. The sort of battle at the top of Grupo Uno, it feels like it's got the bigger fixtures this week than Grupo Dos, but the race for Grupo Dos Glory is also very, very close, isn't it? So, yeah, we've got lots of decent games to look forward to. Finally, Nick, before we leave you, listeners, we have some quite exciting news from our own personal perspective. Not exciting for you listeners at all, but very exciting for us. We might yet, by next week, if we get lucky, if all goes to plan, if the postie does us no harm, have some Primera RFEF shirts heading our way very soon.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this one as well because I think we are starting to put maybe some colours on the mast, and now we're literally starting to do it with the black and green of Sestao River Club. Again, I have to thank you first and foremost for bringing this to my attention and some of the legwork that you've done to getting these shirts across to us. But I believe you spoke to a lovely lady in the club shop in Bilbao, and she's done us a bit of a solid, hasn't she?
She absolutely has. Said many thanks to Sonia Lopez Iglesias for making this all possible, for being so positive and so willing to help us. And yeah, fingers crossed. And then we need to meet up, Nick, because they're both coming to me. So you have to come and find me, and I'll come and find you. We'll meet halfway. I'm not sure all these shirts will be ready for us for the next show, but I would certainly hope so for the show after that. So tremendous. And I think the next one we have on is, you've kind of already alluded to this, haven't you? The Claro Deportivo third kit. I'm making inquiries, Nick. We'll see how we get on. We might possibly be there to purchase it in person very soon, might we not? If not, we will be having negotiations to see if they can come up trumps for us on that front. So yeah, very exciting for us as both avid shirt collectors to start our Primera RFEF collection very soon.
Yeah, definitely, and like you said, hopefully good news on the visit to Yekla on that front. I'm just maybe thinking, how many ducks is it going to cost me in this little equation I'm working out in my own head? But certainly would like to get over there and get my hands on that third shirt, because it is a bit of a beaut. And yes, that brings us to the end of episode 5. We are barreling through this season on El Pozo, the Primera RFEF show. We obviously have other projects as well, Liam. So I believe on these weekly basis, you're also giving us some recommendations from the Spanish Segunda show. What games are you recommending for this coming weekend?
Yeah, it's a brilliant weekend, to be honest. In Segunda, equally close race for the top, 6 places in it's probably 6 from 8 really is at the moment. 2 massive games at the top of the table: Real Oviedo against Levante and Granada against Elche. Those are the best of the bunch. There's plenty of other games that you wouldn't want to miss. I don't quite know what else I'm going to do this weekend other than watch football, but what's new about that? How about El Partido? What have you got coming up later on in the week?
Well, we're obviously now getting so big for ourselves, Liam, that we've come off the back of an interview with a world-renowned and famous author, and now we're moving into a series. Things are getting serious on El Partido, and this one's going to be called Sleeping Giants, and we start with maybe the biggest rise and fall of them all. But yeah, you'll have to tune in on Friday when the podcast release to find out who we're talking about on that one there, because we're very excited to get this episode out and this series of Sleeping Giant episodes into the world out there. So yeah, but more importantly, for our Pozo's perspective, we'll be back again very, very soon to talk about all the games from the Spanish third tier as we head towards the end of the season climax and then the playoffs. We might even have a special live episode potentially in the future if we manage to align our diaries too. So I'm very much looking forward to that. But I'll say thank you to you, Liam. Gracias to all at home for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
Indeed, we were going to do this every 2 weeks, weren't we, Nick? But we're hooked. So we'll probably see you next week. But whenever it is, hasta la próxima.
Yes, hasta la próxima. Bye-bye.